Welcome to the Raising Empowered Kids interview series. I'm here today with Elynn Light. Elynn is a teen and parenting empowerment coach. She's on a mission to stop the suffering from anxiety, depression, and disconnection that are at an all-time high in our society. Elynn helps parents heal wounds from childhood. She works with teens who feel alone, overwhelmed, or not good enough. She helps to heal the emotional pain from adoption, trauma, or sexual abuse. Elynn has a degree in human services. She's a certified rapid transformational therapist and a tapping into wealth coach. Welcome, Elynn. I'm so glad that you're here today. I'm really excited to talk to you.
I'm excited to be here.
So today we're going to talk about, substance abuse and suicide. And I wanted to know a little bit about why you're interested in helping parents and teens, in this area.
Oh, I started nursing in the 70s, and gosh, if I want to be completely vulnerable, I think I would say that I've struggled with an emotional undertow in my life, even though I have this sunny exterior. And as a nurse, I've worked in detox. I've worked with a lot of adolescents. And what I'm seeing right now is that not only do adults not have the tools, but kids don't have the tools for what to do when emotions come up. And our suicide rates in the last 6 years are 35% increase in teens. And it's pretty heartbreaking.
Yeah, it really is. And, I just actually read in the news in the last, couple days that a 9-year-old boy committed suicide, after coming out as gay. And I was just like, oh my gosh, 9 years old. That's so,
Yeah.
It's so sad. And then I was reading too that, that ages 10 to, I think it was 14, that's like one of the highest age categories for suicide. And I was just kind of blown away, like, oh my gosh, and when I was in high school, we were in a small high school, and we had 2 students commit suicide around the age of 14. No, I take it back, around the age of 17. And yeah, it's so heartbreaking, these poor kids, like their future is ahead of them. And, once they get through childhood, it's like, it gets easier.
Yeah, right.
It does. Being a kid is hard, being a parent is really hard too. But yeah,
Yes. And so I was at a meeting on Sunday and happened to get in some random conversations with 4 mothers that said, I am around stressed out teens and I need tools to know how to help them. And I think as a culture, we aren't really taught how to deal with emotions. I think as a culture, we're taught, don't feel, just think positive,
right.
Stay out of the feeling department, just think and take action and be positive. And then it's really interesting. There's a book actually written on suicide called the Project Semicolon. And the semicolon is the tattoo for that goes along with suicide awareness. And it means your life isn't over, like a semicolon.
Okay.
So there are a lot of interesting stories in there about people's lives that have or have not been, they call it, made it an attempt or a successful attempt.
Right.
So as I've been studying, there are 2 amazing TED Talks out, one by a school teacher and another one by a man that goes around and talks to schools, that are so informative about, why is this happening and what can we do about it? So I don't know if you have other questions for me before I get to that, but it's like, whoa.
Yeah, well, let's go for it. It's like, why is this happening? Why are the suicide rates up?
So,
Yeah.
there was a hypothesis that, there's so much more pressure in school now around homework. And they found, nope, that's not really it. So bullying is up. because now, girls can take pictures of each other undressing in the locker room and say, you may as well just end it now. And, you're too skinny, you're too fat. I mean, I never even thought about that when I was in school. We weren't having to deal with that. So the cell phones are really getting our teens, like who's saying what about me? And, there's that whole
Yeah,
pressure.
I've heard that like social media and cell phones and this kind of thing is almost kind of like weaponizing free speech. And this was taken in different context, but it really seems kind of that way. Like it never even occurred to me that girls would like take pictures of each other in the locker room. When you said that, I was like, what? I was like, oh my God, it's like you could be a victim of, your naked photo going around the school and you didn't even send it to somebody, it's like,
You're just in gym class, getting dressed for your gym class, so, I mean, when I heard it, I was heartbroken.
I know.
Because, that's a sacred part of ourselves that we should be able to choose who we're sharing that with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really
And
true.
I like your word weaponizing, Robin, because that is weaponizing freedom of speech.
Yeah.
So based on the books that I've been reading and the TED Talks that I've been reading, it's here's the good news. It kind of boils it down for us of what to be aware about, of how to be proactive.
Okay.
So Dr. Thomas Joyner is oh gosh, I didn't write down what university, but he says the two primary causes of suicide are that people feel alone, people feel that they're a burden.
Right.
Okay. And then this amazing guy, Jeff Yalden, and we can, type this in later anywhere for people wanting to look at the amazing TED Talk Jeff Yalden did. And he's an expert in teen mental health and suicide prevention. He says, kids want to know two things. Can I trust you? And do you care about me?
Mm-hmm.
He also talks about how important it is to have sleep, nutrition, and social engagement. And that this whole theory, this whole feeling of us being alone is what's really kind of underneath all of problems with depression and suicide and drug use. When we just feel like I'm alone, I don't matter, I'm a burden, I'm worthless, it's never going to get better, I may as well end it all, or like it's so painful, I may as well just shoot up and numb myself,
Right.
So I was disturbed by all these the suicide increase and the opioid crisis. Are you aware of that where you live?
Yeah, I'm not sure how bad the problem is in my area, but I know that, like in the area where I grew up, we never used to have problems with that, but we have, like there's a big heroin problem over there.
Yes.
I know it's around in, where I live now, Tucson. I don't know, like I haven't heard of like large numbers of people needing to be revived and that kind of stuff, but it's pretty much everywhere.
It is pretty much everywhere. Oh, one of the things I wanted to talk to moms about is dental procedures for teens.
Mm-hmm.
In my family, I have here I am just going public for all of us. I have a nephew that went to the dentist and, then they give him pain pills. And when he got his first pain pills, he was like, yeah, this is for me. And later he was actually, do they call it hospitalized or institutionalized twice for treating drugs? And he said that was his first exposure was at the dentist.
Right.
And, when I went to the dentist, they just give you extra strength Tylenol. We don't need all these heavy drugs that we're getting.
Right.
I also have a niece that was given, I can't remember if it was an antibiotic. It would have to be an antibiotic or a pain pill, and I'm pretty sure it was the antibiotic she was given. She actually went into a mental breakdown and a whole mental health crisis. So we think of going to the dentist like, oh, we should just trust the dentist and take whatever they're giving us. But that's the place where we need to be careful, is that one, and then sports injuries, because that's where kids are getting first introduced to opioids.
Right.
And then they start trying to get more opioids, and then they're too expensive to get the pills, and that's when they go to heroin.
Mm. Yeah, and heroin is so bad. Oh my God, so bad. So, I mean, none of them are good. So, yeah, I mean, thank you for bringing that up, because it is true, and I have heard that before. Like that some physicians, some dentists, are very, loose or easy about giving out prescriptions to some of these heavy opioids and, some of
Yeah.
these serious drugs. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, when I had my wisdom teeth pulled, I didn't have any of that stuff. I mean, if there's a good reason for it, okay, fine. But if you can do without it, it's better to not go there.
Right. I had impacted wisdom teeth, which means the dentist was chiseling out bone.
Mm.
And I went to a Sly and the Family Stone concert that night after getting all those teeth pulled out. Now, maybe I was happy because of the concert, but still, I think it was 4 teeth.
Right? Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think I had an aspirin.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So we've kind of gotten to be, I don't want to feel any pain of any kind culture.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Mm. No, it leads some of our people down a path to addiction, and that's unfortunate. So let's talk a little bit about, like, what are some of the signs that, kids are struggling and might, be turned to drugs or alcohol, or possibly, be feeling alone, isolated, depressed, and, possibly, go down that road to considering or attempting suicide.
Right. So, Robin, that's the bad news, is there are not always signs.
Mhm.
Often there are no signs because we hide depression because we think that we're going to be judged, or it's a weakness or a problem. So a lot of times the kids suffering the most are actually going to be, top students, popular, athletic. And we're like, where did this come from? And that's why oh gosh, this brings up like 6 topics I could talk on, because the prefrontal cortex is not developed in teens and they have impulse reactions. So say you have a popular teen that goes out to a party. I mean, it's I don't know of a generation where there wasn't going to be some alcohol or something at a parties,
Right.
and it's normal to be curious. And I want to encourage teens to be curious and have life and have fun, but it's like when they get too drunk and too high, and
Mhm.
then say something happens at a party, a girl rejects them, or, something sexually untoward happens. And, there was a recent case where the boy went home and hung himself after a party, just straight home, up to the bathroom, hung himself in the shower.
Oh my gosh.
So we need to keep the communication lines open with the kids. If a kid is withdrawing, I would say that's one place we want to say, okay, the kid is withdrawing. No, normally withdrawing happens from a controlling parent, sorry to say it, but it's like the parents controlling, the kids angry or upset. They feel like they're carrying a resentment, and they feel like they don't have any power. So they take their power by withdrawing and becoming silent.
Mm-hmm.
And so then that creates that, cat and mouse thing.
Right.
So that's where we want to get help for our teens, to speak to someone else, because the parent is sadly not always the best one to talk to them. It can be a grandparent, a neighbor, a therapist, a trusted family friend. So I don't want to paint it all gloom and doom, because there's, there are a lot of great kids, and there are a lot of healthy kids, and a lot of, happy, fun kids. But we are on this very serious topic, and I wanted to share as much information to equip our parents and mothers to know what to watch for. So withdrawing is really one. And my sister is a delightful mom, and she said, yes, in those hormone changing years, 12, 13, and Robin, you would know more about this than me, the hormone years, they're going to be crabby, cranky, maybe need more sleep. She said, if that starts happening when they're in 11th and 12th grade, it can be drugs. So, you know, my nephew was hiding and lying and cranky and had a personality change with the opioids.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would make sense, especially with some of those harder drugs to, you know, when you're feeling the physical withdrawal, that's definitely, it's harder to hide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
Yes.
So what about like pot? Like, for example, pot is legal in, you know, for medical use in, I think, like 22 states, and it's actually legal for recreational use in a few states. So how can parents talk about, you know, like say pot to kids, or even alcohol use? Because like you said, it's going to be at the parties that they go to. So, you know, like, are there, I'm sure there are tools that, you know, parents can give their kids so that they can either say no or not imbue too much, you know, have some restraint, you know, think about this in like a logical sense. And I know that can be challenging because we have, you know, the prefrontal cortex, which is not fully developed until like age 24 or 25.
Right.
So, yeah, so what do you think?
Well, I feel like laying that foundation of communication and trust in the early years with kids is so important.
Mhm.
And so that when they go out to a party, you're going to, you know, it depends on your parenting style. I know a guy that drug tested his kids every week. He said, I'm not chancing it. If you don't have a clean test, no allowance. You know, he had a hard line with his kids. He's like, it's not safe. The drugs are dirty now. I don't want you experimenting until you are older. And, you know, I want you, I think it was out of high school, clean and sober. So not everybody is going to take that hard of a line. And a lot of parents are smoking pot and their kids know it. So it's interesting. So I'm very kinesthetic. So my answers are in the body. Let me just find that answer for you. I think the most important thing is that our kids feel loved and they feel they can talk to us. And one of the best ways to know to know that your kid feels loved is to know what their love language is. This
Mhm.
book, The 5 Love Languages for Teens by Gary Chapman, is amazing. Do you know this book?
I haven't seen it, no, but I am familiar with the five love languages, so it's cool that there's a teenage version.
And I didn't want to have to read this one too, but I'm sure glad I did, because they were talking about, you know, if the parents are taking the kid on this special vacation and fishing trip, but they haven't, you know, given them the words of affirmation or the touch that they want, they're going to feel unloved. So as parents, we don't want to be knocking ourselves out and the kid's still not feeling loved. So to make sure the kid feels loved, find out what their primary and secondary love languages are, so that that love tank is full. Because the most important thing we can give our kids is self-esteem, because then they can take some more bumps in the road of not making the team, or, you know, not getting the guy, or getting a bad grade, or having
Right.
some mean girls.
Mm-hmm.
Girls can be vicious. Woo!
Yeah, well, and what you're talking about is giving kids the opportunity to fail, essentially. You know, like bad things happen, and so it's like, you know, you hear people talking about how, you know, like, oh, everybody wins, you know, you get two sports teams and everybody wins, everybody gets a medal, you know, it's like, oh, we're all winners, you know, even though, you know, somebody's supposed to lose. So it's like we're sheltering our kids from that disappointment. And so it basically gives them, you know, shortchanges them the opportunity to have those failure, those disappointment those experiences, that will help prime them. It's like we're giving them the opportunity to have these experiences in a safe environment, so that when they go out in, when they become teenagers, when they become 20 something, it's like they've had some disappointment, they've seen a little struggle, they know that they need to work, for certain things. If they want something, they know how to work for it now,
Yes.
versus when you've got, a 19 or 20-year-old, and you're trying to get them out of the house, and they're struggling because they've never like had a letdown, or
Yes.
those kinds of things. And so I have a
Yeah.
friend who's I think experience her, her daughter's experiencing, his daughter's experiencing a little bit of that stuff right now. Like she's falling down, and the falling down part is hurting a little bit more than, you
Yes.
little
Right.
kids and you fall down.
Yes. And that's a part of that stage emotionally that teens are in, is they're becoming individuals and having self-identity and having to push away from the parents. And so, the parents' job, and I'm not sure how many different speakers you're going to be exposing, but as the parents are, sorry, as the kids are individuating and they're wanting all these privileges, it's like, you can have the privilege, but, I want you to show that you can handle the responsibility. Right. Yes. And that goes such a long way around suicide, depression, addiction, sexuality. It's like, yeah, you're going to go put this to the test now, and it might not be easy or fun every time. There's going to be some lessons out there, but having that self-love and self-esteem at the basis is going to really go a long way. And our kids are pulling away in their teen years, and yet they still need us. It's like that
Mhm.
push pull.
Yes.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's tricky. Yeah.
Absolutely. So what kind of resources, like say for example, like, parent has figured out that their teen is using alcohol or drugs. What would you suggest that they do? I mean, obviously they are probably not excited about that and would rather that their teen does not do those kinds of things. So what can they do? Because I mean, and you can say no, and you can ground them, you can do, all this stuff, but it's not going to stop them from doing those behaviors. So are there strategies or things that you can do to actually like get through to your teen and like make them think twice about doing that, engaging in those things?
Well, that's a great question. I hear now at parties they have these punch bowls where everybody just goes through their parents' medicine cabinets and throws in all the pills, and they don't even know what they're getting.
That's
So
terrifying.
it's terrifying to nurses and health practitioners. It's like, oh my gosh. So I would tell my teen, I want you to have fun, but I want you to understand some of the risks that you're up against. So I want you to have some fun, but have, minimal risk that you're going to be exposed to some of these drugs that might have you pass out and have God knows what happened to you while you're out there.
Right.
So if a kid is drinking, first of all, it's going to trigger an addictive response in some and not in others. And you never know which camp your kids are in until they're in.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, my kid can just, have one drink or, have a couple drinks and they're fine.
Right.
The other kids have been sneaking in the liquor cabinet since they're 9, just knowing like, I need this, I want this, I can't wait to get some more. So there are a lot of detox centers now, but frankly, like I use a hybrid hypnosis to look at what is the root cause, what's the emotional cause under that. And I actually make recordings
Mm-hmm.
that people can listen to turn around whatever the emotional aspects are going. And that's a rapid transformational session. So
Mhm.
that's if somebody already knows there's a problem and we really need to dig and get the root. But I love to teach parents, either with their teens or separately, how to release stress through EFT tapping.
Mhm.
So I love that coaching. It's like, I want to give you the tools so that when you have your first heartbreak, so that when you get your first big disappointments, or when you're really pissed off at someone, that you can release that through, and it's not going to go on forever. You are going to get through it. Teens, whatever they're feeling, it becomes their whole world,
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Emotions during the teenage years are definitely like they're amplified. It's like they're
Yes.
they're more intense than when you're an adult, I think. And yeah, so having some tools to help channel that anger or channel the sadness, the heartbreak, I think could be really beneficial. Can you talk to our listeners a little bit about the tools that you're using?
Tapping, which has been around for 30 years. And it's tapping on acupressure points, and it really helps move emotion out quickly. So I teach people how to use tapping effectively. I also teach people how to work with body sensation and dialogue for
Mhm.
people that are more body oriented. We look at, so say somebody is angry, it's like, okay, you have the right to be angry, and now let's see if we can move that. So we come into the body, see where it is, do some breathing, and perhaps do some dialogue. So I have 4 primary tools that I really like, but those are the 2 that I use the most.
Okay, cool.
Yes, yeah. And the more we can arm our kids with good tools, the better. So I do have that teenage survival toolkit available, but I want to give a tip of the hat to Johan Hari.
Mhm.
This book, again, he's done an amazing TED talk, and he's looking at the causes of anxiety and depression like nobody I've seen. He's I don't know where he got the budget to do the research for this amazing book. It's beautifully and interestingly written,
Mhm.
and he really speaks about the 9 things that are underneath depression and how to turn that around. And basically that addresses all the things that can get our teens into trouble. you know are they connected to people?
Mhm.
Are they connected to a tribe? Do they feel hopeful about their future? um, we've got 9, so it's oh, he says, after taking heavy antidepressants for 32 years, that they really found that underneath it could be suppressed childhood trauma.
Mhm.
It could be and a feeling of disconnection from and uh, status. So, if like, I'm never going to be in the cool kids, I'll never be in the clique,
Right.
that gives a kind of like down. So there's nine aspects that he talks about that really are underneath everything. That, I mean, obviously if somebody is depressed, someone is going to be either depressed or anxious, that's going to become addicted or have a suicide attempt. And that book is brilliant. It really drills in. So if a
Interesting.
parent reads that and is aware of it, then they're not going to be teaching their kid like happiness is in material things, and I'm going to buy you, the coolest tennis shoes and the coolest iPads and pods, and they're going to uh, give a sense of meaning to the kids of where true happiness comes from.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's important. And I think it helps kids to manage expectations too, because like if you're thinking that all these material things are going to bring you joy and happiness over the long term, it's like you're going to be sorely disappointed. It's like
Yeah.
happiness comes from within, and we need to learn how to like self soothe and
Yes.
process these emotions. So having the tools to, and the language to express the emotions, like for boys, they it's okay to express anger, but it's, if you cry, you're a sissy, they be told to man up, and all these types of things. And so
Yes.
Yeah, so being able to tap into your emotions and, letting boys know that, hey, it is okay to cry, and, these feelings are valid. And, I think, having kids have that, the vocabulary for their emotions and also the experience of what they are will help to, I think, reduce, some of the depression and that kind of stuff. Because I think, there's lots of reasons for depression, but I'm certainly not an expert on it. But yeah. So
Sometimes I wish I knew less about it. So,
yeah,
but no,
yeah.
just kidding. But
Mhm,
it's it's really interesting that it boils down to four primary emotions:
mhm,
apathy, grief, fear, and anger. And apathy is anything hopeless, helpless, I give up, why bother? Grief, of course, is all the sadness and loss.
mhm,
And fear can be anything from anxiety to a panic attack. And anger can be anything from irritation and annoyance to rage.
mhm.
And so, if we understand that's the normal range of emotions, and we are going to have emotions in life, but we want to learn how to deal with them so that we aren't going to get in trouble with our health, our relationships, our jobs, the authorities, right? It's even telling our kids it's normal to get mad and you have the right to be mad, but what you want to do with that anger is important,
Right.
you know. And
Channel it in constructive ways versus, punching holes in the wall or beating up your little sister or whatever.
exactly, great examples. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So, and are you using like the EFT to like teach kids to channel those emotions, or how do you talk to parents and kids about channeling those kinds of emotions?
Definitely. So the thing about emotions is that we want to say of we want to acknowledge the feeling. It's almost like it's such an important first step to say, "Oh, they treated you poorly and you're angry. Well, you have the right to be angry." Or, "Oh, they treated you poorly and you're sad." Well, of course you're sad. And so acknowledging the feeling and then doing the tapping points. And so we measure how much charge, like how angry are you on a scale of 1 to 10.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do some tapping, and then we see it drop, 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 drop.
Mm-hmm.
And so somebody could be pretty darn mad and within 5 minutes be neutral about it.
Okay.
So it's useful for sports, it's useful for grades, it's useful for relationships within families, it's useful for um, frustrations around friendships and social dynamics at school. So body image, I mean, the list goes on.
So what about like when you're kind of caught up in the story in your head, and you know how it goes. It's like you got these repeating thoughts going on, and it's like it's upsetting you, it's making you cry, it's making you angry, whatever it happens to be. How can you like shut those down, like that repetitive voice down, and just kind of like break out of that so that you can come down off that emotional charge or whatever.
That's a great question. So when people have repeating, I'm not good enough, I'm ugly, I'm fat, I'm not smart enough, I'm not X enough, the first step is catching it. So
Mm-hmm.
if a person who just loves staying and being in drama, they they might just really enjoy that. Oh, so we can just clearly point that out to say, you know um, there is a choice about, but not in a judgmental way, or it's not going to go over well. It's like we can stay in the drama of things. You have the right to be upset, but should you want to feel different or better, we have these tools. And so tapping actually works on thoughts as well as feelings. And then I make personalized recordings for people to create new thoughts. So the mind is going to respond to the words we say and the pictures that we make. So if we've got a tape saying I'm not good enough, I'm blah 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 blah,
Mhm.
we want to put in the positives by having a recording made just for the person that's going to create some new neural pathways for them.
Okay.
Kids love it. I mean, we can do those recordings for test anxiety, for SATs. It's really useful
Cool. And
to
speaking
turn
of
those.
anxiety, let's kind of go back to that because you started out in the beginning, saying that kids are having a lot of issues with anxiety lately. Can you talk about what are some of those things that are causing the anxiety?
Teens are always going to, well, all people have body image, performance, whether they're accepted by their peers is huge.
Mm-hmm.
There's this huge, big need to fit in. And so sometimes kids will be desperate to have the cool label or the cool electronic thing out of their desperation to want to fit in and be accepted. So if we can address that as parents directly and say, they're getting their self-esteem from a logo, you're going to get your self-esteem from where it truly counts. And adoption is a big source of anxiety. I've seen kids that have that early trauma
Mm-hmm.
because I worked in detox. Honestly, it was really interesting. I had an interesting year of working in a detox facility, and I got to work with heroin addicts.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time you interface, if that's not your normal social circle, you're like, heroin, oh my God, what are they going to be like? They're just like you and me. They're mothers, they're teens, they're kids who've had so much pain, they found relief from it and wanted to keep going. So I think anxiety can come from, stress at home,
Mm-hmm.
another really big one.
Mm-hmm.
Academics revolve around criticism. And in school, they're always looking for your mistakes and making suggestions for how you can improve and what would be better. And she said, this is really diminishing to kids, especially the kids that have the love language of positive affirmation. It's even harder on them. And so there were, for some reason in Colorado Springs, there have been a lot of teen suicides. And so they really looked at it. And she said that, sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Well, yeah, and what you were saying too, like being criticized in school, that really just kind of struck a chord with me because we we're so critical anyway. And to have somebody, especially when their love language is positive affirmation, to be like always having your work torn down and it's never good enough and this kind of thing. I think no wonder school is not pleasant. I never even really thought about that. It's like
Right.
you're always being told what you're doing wrong.
And so this teacher, because she had one suicide that actually the person died, and the next one was an attempt in a hospital. So,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so here I found the list that she said, and she's really right in there with the teens, right in on the suicide. She said the pressures are academics, social pressures, family problems, and the need to fit in. So she said that what she did as a teacher, because she felt that at school the teachers are really with the kids more than they're with their family, and that has a greater impact. So she started really seeing the kids as individuals. And so even the annoying ones, like she would notice that trait and say, wow, I'll bet that would really be good for this, so she would really, and even if kids were failing and not making good grades, she would tell them, just because you're failing, you're not a failure.
Right.
And encouraging them about what they're good at. And so she says, it's so easy to be critical, but it really causes us to be vulnerable, to not be critical, to open our hearts, to encourage each other, to find the good in each other. And that's the strategy that she used after being so deeply impacted by these students of hers. And they're really responding well to that. Just having that one person that really cares and sees you and make a big difference in a kid's life.
Huge, huge, especially if they're not like getting that kind of validation at home and or in
Uh-huh.
other areas of their life. Having that one person, whether it's a teacher, a mentor, that one adult person who's just in their corner and rooting for them, I think can make a huge difference. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I really love, to find the good in each other because, it is so hard for us to be judgmental and critical. I mean, it's so easy for us to be judgmental and critical. I think it's good to challenge ourselves to find the positive, to find the good and share that.
Yes. So even if our teens are misbehaving and pulling away, that we've got to take that time to say that positive thing or to take that time out with them to, do something special with them, have some one-on-one time, keep those strong connections. So, say you have a daughter or a son that likes a certain thing, even if it's not your favorite, go do that with them and keep that relationship strong so
Mhm.
they know that they can talk to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if they're struggling with depression or negative feelings, you want that communication channel to be open so that they're going to deal with it in the beginning before it's gotten so extreme they're in trouble.
Yeah, definitely. And having that line of communication open, early on, can I think help prevent, going down some of those roads. I mean, can't prevent everything. I mean, like going back to that little 9-year-old boy, it's like that's just so heartbreaking, and what can we do to help kids, who suddenly find themselves in a situation where they just don't know what to do and think that that's like their only solution. So
Right. And I think the more that we can encourage what's good and special about them and to, unfortunately they think that this is life and that it feels like it's going to be this way forever is the problem.
yeah,
Right.
it's all they've known. They've only known being a child. It's like not until you get older and you realize, oh, this is like what life is like when you get to college or high school. It's like when I got to high school, I mean, it's so different than graded school. Like graded school was a nightmare. It's like, oh, thank God I made it to high school.
Right.
It's like a whole different world, new people, it's like you can blend into the crowd. I mean, I was one of these kids who's, kind of nerdy, a little socially awkward and, not one of the cool kids, kind of thing, and got picked on. And it's like once I got into a bigger school, that kind of dissipated a little bit, and
Yes.
once I got out of school, I was like, oh, life is great. And, I was like, I'll never go back to the high school, graded school. No way. Best years of your life? I don't think so.
Mine was similar to yours. They were not my best years at all. It was
Yeah.
like finally when I got to college and I could experience some new potentials for myself and new identities.
Hmm.
It was really good. And
Yeah.
I think for our kids, to really encourage their whatever, what their interests are, I think is so validating.
Mm-hmm.
It's like to see what's special about them, what's unique about them, and how that can be applied. Because in addiction, there's this saying like, find your passion or serve others. But sometimes it's not enough to just find a passion. You have to develop it. Say you're maybe interested in color and art. Great, let's get you some art supplies. Let's expose you to more art and see where that wants to go and see how it wants to develop.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, helping kids to explore those different things, like try out different hobbies. I mean,
Yes.
it's really great. Like I feel blessed that, when I was growing up, I grew up in a rural state. I grew up in Vermont. Like there's absolutely nothing to do unless you create it to do. And or it's like if you're not into
No.
nature, it's like there's nothing to do there. And so it's like you either like figure it out and figure out how to entertain yourself, or you become alcoholic and get pregnant at a young age and go down that road, you know. It's like, you know,
Yes.
luckily for me, that was not my fate, you know, and I was creative. My grandmother was very crafty, so I, you know, got into like making crafts, being creative, doing art, you know, being out in
Yes.
nature, and, you know,
Yes.
taking pictures, like trying to figure out what the bugs and the plants and the different things
Yes.
were, you know, and just like really just being curious about the world around me. And, you know, here I am today. You know, it's like I'm not really a mainstream kind of person, you know. It's like you're not going to find me in corporate America.
Yes. Yeah.
Not that
I
there's anything wrong with that, but that was not my journey. Yeah.
It's not your journey. I think nature is one of the most healing things.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think that nature and creativity helped bring me through emotionally challenging times in my life. I was fortunate to get sewing lessons when I was in the seventh grade or something, and just liked color and fabric and clothing, and could express myself through that. Any channel that you have for expressing yourself is so
Yeah.
positive.
And it's, you know, part of exploring who you are and the things that you like and enjoy. And, you know, I think a lot of kids are kind of missing out on that, you know, like maybe they get pushed into like, you know, certain athletics, you know, whether it's, you know, your future's in football, you know, that's how
Mhm.
you get, you know, get your scholarships or whatever. But, you know, I mean, that's all well and good and everything, but not necessarily at the expense of, you know, exploring other things. Because if you don't get your scholarship, then what are you going to do? So,
Yeah,
you know, it's like,
throwing all your eggs in that Olympic skater basket.
yeah, exactly, exactly, yeah.
In the detox that I worked in, they had a great program in the regards of, they had yoga teachers, they
Mhm.
had like different exercise, they had art, they had gardening, so all these things that one would hopefully be exposed to in their normal childhood, but
Mhm.
you know, most parents don't have the time and the resources to expose you to everything, you know.
Mhm.
So rehabs cost about $30,000 a month.
Yeah.
And what I've seen is that the therapy doesn't go very deep. They're, cleaning up the brain, and they're exposing them to good nutrition, and, the best uh, places would have these, arts and yoga and sound therapy and, rock to recovery music. And, I mean, there are some really great programs, but I feel like therapeutically, they're trying to be so safe. Like, well, they're probably not ready to feel a feeling yet.
Yeah.
I am just like, oh my gosh, our culture is,
That's why people relapse, is because even though they got detox and they're clean, they didn't do what's in here. And this is, you know, that's
what,
where the problem is.
yes. And
So,
I've studied the tools for 30 years of how to get into the emotions and release them in a kind and gentle way.
mhm.
And so that, if you're going back to a painful emotion, like some sadness or some fear, you just have to breathe for a few minutes, and then you come out the other side, and then you have freedom, you have peace, and you have greater health. And you could pay $30,000 several times and just not get the therapy you need. I mean,
Yeah.
you can always go to your own yoga and art class, but you want to get you want a skilled therapist that can take you through to those, releasing those emotions
Yeah,
that
well,
are.
and you know, part of the problem is that there's, you know, there's things that are being avoided, and that's why people are deeply unhappy. That's why they need to feel the need to self-medicate. That's why they feel the need to leave the planet. You know, it's like,
Yes.
so yeah, you know, addressing those feelings, those traumas that happened, you know, whether it's during, you know, childhood or later in life. I mean,
Yes.
all of these things have impact on us. You know, I mean, people who've served in the military, they've had trauma. You know,
Yes.
people who've been, you know, sexually abused, harassed, you know, sexually assaulted have trauma.
Yes.
Children who've been abandoned, you know, I mean, like all these poor kids that just, you know, were separated from their parents, you know, in these detention facilities those kids have had trauma. It's like
Yes.
their parent disappeared, without explanation. They didn't get to say goodbye. They were snatched and taken to places and put in, all these things that they didn't understand. It's like, these are the things that cause these kinds of problems, with the substance abuse and the
Yeah.
suicide, and
Yeah.
there's lots of issues. But
And the people that I worked with, the common denominators underneath was not feeling loved,
mhm,
you know, and just not really being seen, not feeling loved, not feeling included, not feeling important. So, that's the biggest job as a parent, is to make sure that you connect well for the kid, to know that they matter, to know that they're important, and to equip them with some good tools to go into life, because feelings are part of life. We're going to have them every day.
yes,
Right?
many
Yeah.
of them every single day.
Many every day.
It's really true.
Yes.
So on that note, let's talk a little bit about your free gift that you wanted to share with everybody.
Yes, I have the Teenage Survival Toolkit, and it's to get parents and teens the tools to use. And I actually have a video and a handout. So if you want to sign up to receive that free gift, the toolkit, I'd be, if you just type in your email, it's automatically sent to you. So thanks for being with us today.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll have the links for all of that on the website, and you guys can go and check out Elyn's work. So thank you so much for being with us, Elynn, today. I really appreciate, your time and your wisdom, and, thank you for sharing all this with us.
Thank you, Robin. Blessings to you all.
Thank you. Coming up tomorrow, we have two very special guests, Barbara Hannah-Laura, and we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, all about menstruation and celebrating a girl's first period, and also how boys can benefit from understanding the female cycle as well. And then we'll be talking to Tova Gar all about social media. And this is a really important conversation because you may think you know what's going on, but let me tell you what, you actually don't. It's crazy out there. So Tova is going to help enlighten us as to what is going on in social media with our kids today. So I'm really looking forward to both of those interviews, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.